This camera takes a couple seconds to start up once you hit the record button. So. Yeah, it's one of these new high def new cameras.
Well, my name is Hakon Strande, or Hakon Strande as it is Americanized. I'm a program manager in the Windows Audio Video Excellence team, and we own the streaming audio and video pipelines in Windows.
Okay. So is Steve Ball your boss?
He's my boss, yeah.
Okay. So you have a general idea.
Anytime you play something, picture or sound, it goes through the technologies that we own or we maintain. So,
is that a head trip to know that every sound on almost every computer in the world goes through the code that your team writes?
It's a big responsibility. And when things go wrong, there's no shortage of people coming to us and saying, complaining. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to make the experience much better. And in Vista, we've done a lot of work to improve the streaming audio experience, which is sort of my focus. So all the way from the device UI that people actually see, through the pipeline, down to the driver layer, down to even the hardware, how the hardware is designed. All those things we've touched for Vista, made changes to, and I thought we'd talk about that today.
Yeah, well, that's my whole mission, is to go around the company and figure out why anybody would buy Vista, right?
Right. This is a great reason to buy Vista.
Because that's what all the buyers like.
It's much
why should I buy Vista? It doesn't look that much better, and so obviously the audio stack has been completely rewritten.
It has, and there are other aspects of the audio pipeline that are interesting, like the glitch resilience and that things.
Yeah.
What I'm going to talk about, or what we're going to talk about today, is mainly the experience, how to improve the experience with selecting devices and seeing what the devices are that are connected to the computer, the other devices, the stability and security of the infrastructure that we've designed to improve, getting rid of blue screens and crashes and that kind of stuff, because that happens on audio devices and audio drivers also, in addition to other technologies. So those kind of things are not very super exciting, like.
And that's
but they're very important.
I think that's the problem. Why it's hard to explain what Windows Vista is, because that kind of stuff you can't demo in 5 minutes, right?
Right.
You go into your favorite computer store and you play with Vista for 5 minutes. Right. That looks cool, but you don't have any idea of the depth of the changes, or what the experience is going to be different after using it for 6 months. And your teams, I think, are going to affect the experience after 6 months. When you really try to play a lot of media, or you got a new video game that was designed for Vista to use all these new features, and all of a sudden things work a lot better than they used to.
Right. There are some immediate UI changes. People notice those because they can see.
Yeah, you had a couple of slides here.
Yeah, I'll show you in a minute. Yeah. But first, I just wanted to talk about some of the changes we did to sort of improve the experience that are not visible.
Right.
And one of those things was to create an initiative called the Universal Audio Architecture, which is basically an umbrella term for Microsoft creating class drivers on standardized, required hardware designs. So we're actually we're actually asking the industry to move to standardized audio designs, so that we can run a class driver, so that a user who installs Vista or installs an operating system in the future, the driver will be there in the box, and it'll just work right out of the box.
So you don't have to download any weird
You don't have
driver.
to go and download something right away. You can if you want to. Obviously, there's different experiences. There's a certain base level experience in the box, and then there's another experience that you can get when you download a driver. But we just want the things to work right out of the box. Sort of like if you ever install a graphics card and you didn't have the driver, there's a VGA, that sys driver, that installs, and you can actually see the screen, and you can install some new stuff because you can see what's on the screen.
Right.
We want the same experience for audio. We want to be able to people to be able to in the future talk to their PC, command their PC, listen to PCs without having all the specialized drivers that
now,
are.
is that technology in the current builds? Because I'm going to nail you, because I just loaded it like last week, and I can't get my audio driver to work at all.
File a bug, Robert.
We already have.
Yeah, it is tied to certain hardware technologies.
Yeah, well, this is
one of the hardware
fairly high-end, sound card. I won't name the sound card because
I'm
sure you guys are working on it.
One of the hardware technologies that we talk about in the UA initiative, and I'm not sure if the viewer can see this.
Oh,
there are 3 technologies that we support right now, and one of the technologies is an evolution of the existing integrated audio design. Maybe you have heard of it. It's called AC97. It's very prevalent in audio solutions integrated on the motherboard today. We're moving that design through our logo requirements for Vista to a new technology called high definition audio,
Right.
which is a technology specified by Intel,
Yeah.
collaboration with Microsoft and the industry hardware manufacturers.
Yeah.
And that's the book that David has written, David Roach has written, talks about that technology in detail.
Is that the book there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talks about that technology in detail.
I never knew there was so much to talk about on audio to write 300 pages or so.
Yeah. There's a lot of good detail in that book, and David can talk about the contents of it in a minute.
Okay.
But I just wanted to tell you that if you don't have a solution that's built on one of these technologies, then you are dependent on a third-party driver that may or may not be in the box or may not be on Windows Update, and you may have to go and get it from the vendor's website or from your OEM's website.
Yeah.
And really the goal of the UA initiative is to avoid that kind of experience the next time we ship an OS.
Right.
For Vista, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a pain when you move from one technology to another, but when we ship the next operating system,
Right.
these technologies will be in place and you'll have that experience.
Now, you said there's a logo program for
Mhm.
Vista.
Mhm.
I haven't done any homework on that.
Okay.
So how does that work?
Well,
do all the teams get together in a room and say, and write up on the board, we're going to require this from the OEMs to get a logo? Or
Each product team, and when I'm talking product team, I mean each team within Windows that has a device class or a functionality or some experience that they're enabling, they want to make sure that hardware can support that experience.
Yeah.
And then they create requirements that move the industry in the direction so that we can have those experiences in Windows.
Yeah.
And the logo program is there so that there can be a way for the user, for the end user, for the consumer to see if the PC, the system, or the device, or the product, any other type of product that has the Design for Windows Vista logo or Design for Windows logo
Yeah.
can be used and can give a good experience on this operating system.
Okay.
So the logo program is there mainly to ensure that product teams can have the experiences that they have enabled in the operating system.
Yeah.
And system vendors and device vendors can get that logo and put it on their devices and systems.
Interesting. And do you work with the OEM? Because I'll be honest, an OEM called me on my cell phone because my cell phone's on my blog,
Right.
and complained about this logo program and said it's too onerous.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be too big a deal for us to meet this logo program. Do you guys work to make sure that the OEM
first we design the experience we want to see,
Yeah.
and then we create requirements that move the industry in that direction.
Yeah.
And then we work with the logo team. There's a whole team compiling all these requirements, sending them and working with the OEMs, getting feedback and sort of moving the logo requirements forward into a finalized version.
Yeah.
So that we work with that team, and obviously we talk to the IHVs and the OEMs as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes, even though it's hard to do, it's hard to move in the direction that Windows wants to move.
Yeah.
We have to try to convince them that there's value there, right?
Yeah.
As long as there's value there and we can show that, then I think that there's a good chance that.
So what is the value?
experience. Well,
what's the 1 minute pitch? What is the home user, when they get Vista home? What
obviously
are they going to see in terms of audio that's so much better than, that obviously your teams have been rewriting audio. We've seen some demos of that, but
Right.
anything else that you got to tell us?
Yeah, specifically for hardware, the hardware now can with this high definition audio specification, the hardware can actually tell the operating system how it is set up, how it is designed, what are the logical devices that are connected to this system. In the past, and I can show you here. In the past, the audio device was mainly a black box to us. We exposed, yes, you have an audio device. We don't really know what's in there.
Yeah.
But now with
So you didn't know if you had a $400 sound card or a $20 sound card?
well, we knew the sound card. Now,
Okay.
Now when you talk about sound cards, like add-in cards,
Yeah.
that's sort of a separate entity that we view separately because right now 95% of the audio solutions that you can buy in PCs are integrated onto the board.
Right.
So they're not actually adding cards, although there exists a lot of great adding cards. They are a smaller part of the market.
Yeah.
So the focus was to improve the experience for as many people as possible.
Yep.
So we looked at how we can do that, and we came up. We worked with Intel on the high definition audio specification.
Right.
And then we created a solution that can tell the operating system that there are these logical endpoints, there are these peripherals exposed to the user.
Yeah.
And what that does, just to skip through here, what that does is that we can create a feature called device roles. What that means is that the devices that are connected to the audio device,
Right.
the peripherals, your headphones, your microphones, your speakers,
Yep.
those kinds of things were not exposed to the user in the past, right? Because we didn't have the insight into the hardware.
Yeah.
Now we can expose.
You only had a 1/8 inch jack and you plugged it in, and it
Right.
you know, the machine didn't know that I plug in a headset versus a speaker versus
Right.
a.
Now we can expose that, and we
Okay.
can show that to the user, and we can enable the user to select certain of those devices to use in certain scenarios. Let's say you have a voice communication application. You can set up Windows to use your microphone and your headset as a voice communication device role. After that, all the voice communication applications you may install can subscribe to that role and automatically just work without you having to set up anything.
Oh, really?
It subscribes to the device role. Device role specifies the microphone and the whatever rendering device you want, as speakers or headphones or whatever, and it just works right out of the box. And device roles are currently real-time communication device role, entertainment device role, and then console, which is the system sounds and the notifications that you get from Outlook and stuff like that. And one of the major scenarios is you want to watch your DVD,
Yeah.
but you still want to be able to place or take a voice over IP call
Yeah.
anytime. And you can set up Windows now so that that call does not disturb the playback of the entertainment scenario, so that you can have a DVD playing,
Interesting.
you can take an IP call on a separate independent device that is assigned that other device role, the voice communication device role.
Okay.
So it's much more powerful than in the past where we just had, okay, there's an audio device and you go into your application and set it up and whatever, there was no really common way to create a policy around how you want to use your audio devices.
Got it.
So that's one of the things we're doing.
Can you set up different apps to use different equalizer settings? For instance, of my music, I want to boost the bass and treble, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm talking to you in MSN Messenger on voice over IP, I probably want to boost the mid range because I don't want the treble and the bass to be over it.
That can be done in the application. That's sort of a
So developers have control of that
application.
by per application.
Yeah.
I knew they have per application volume. I didn't know that they had per application control of things like equalizer.
this processing that you're talking about,
Yeah.
it depends on where it lives.
Okay.
It should live in the application.
Okay.
So when the application streams out to the audio system, then when it hands off the stream, that's before that is when it should do the equalization, and you should be
Right.
able to set that up.
Right.
If the equalization happens as a value add on top of the audio hardware, then there can be different equalization settings for each of these logical endpoints.
Ah.
But that's a control panel that's owned by the audio hardware vendor, not the application vendor. So you can
Okay.
potentially do it in two places,
All right.
which is not ideal. So we recommend that the applications are doing it.
The other thing is now that surround sound systems are getting pretty cheap. I mean, at Fry's, I think I saw some for $40-$50 for 5 speaker systems, and that's
Not
a
very
complete.
good, but-
No, but okay, a good one's $100. But still, that's fairly affordable for a lot of people
Yep.
compared to what it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I could only afford a stereo pair of speakers. Now I
Right.
can afford a full blown. Can I control where my audio comes, what speaker my audio comes out of per application?
That depends on what the audio device is capable of. But if
Okay.
you have an audio device that's capable of multi-channel playback,
Yeah.
and then you can set that up and you can control the settings for how those speakers work and what kind of volume you have in each speaker and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's sort of on the side of what this is about, but yeah, you can do that.
Okay. Cool. I'm just asking all the
Right.
stupid audio questions
That's
I
cool.
have.
So-
Because the world of audio is changing. I mean,
So I guess I wanted to show you the difference. This is sort of the UI from XP and all the way back to Windows 3.
Yeah, I reckon.
3.1, I think.
Yeah, that hasn't changed in a while.
Right. So, and you had this very difficult to understand mixer where there was some cryptic names that changed, based on
what's
the drivers installed.
SW synth? I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah, and then there was these drop-down menus here where you can select different audio devices, but not logical endpoints. Now,
Yeah.
since we have this new technology and we are building our infrastructure around that technology in Vista, we can do things like this, where we show exactly what are the devices that are connected up to the audio device. We can show that there's a pair of headphones. We can show that there's a microphone. There's an AVR connected to the SPDIF. There's a couple of speakers. There's some RCA line input jacks. Information like this was not available in the past. So, so although we're still working on how this UI will look, this is not the final UI, but this is kind of information that.
Well, that's a good thing to know too, because a lot of people assume that the Vista that they're seeing in the CTPs today is final UI. That's
There's
not
a lot
true.
of fit and finish going on.
Good. I hope so, because it needs a lot of fit and finish. We all have. We all see weird screenshots right now, and it's.
If you find bugs, file them.
Yep. Okay.
That's the message to everybody who's viewing this as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that we can do with this new technology is basically we can show the user, now this is a mock-up, but we can show the user whether or not a device is connected.
Right.
So
just put those down so that they don't shake.
In this case, here, the headphones are shown connected. They are, they're not translucent or gray or anything.
Right.
And then if they're disconnected, then we can show in some way. This isn't final yet. Maybe there'll be a grayed out item with an X, or maybe this says disconnected or something. That we can actually show the user that, hey, you can't actually stream to this device. You can't use this device, even though you have a jack that says headphones. You haven't actually plugged in a headphone, so we're not going to allow applications to stream to that because that would confuse you.
Yeah.
Right? A user would be confused. Okay, Windows Media Player is playing. It doesn't give me any error message, but I don't hear anything. Oh, maybe I didn't plug in my speakers.
Wow, that is a lot better experience. Because I always, if you're bringing up that ugly old one.
Yeah,
the ugly old one. The ugly old box would give you 16 choices.
Right.
And you only wanted to mess with the microphone level, for instance.
Right. We could do another talk about volume. That's a whole separate, category that we have done a lot of work in as well. Where you have a per application volume control and things like that.
Yeah. Now, a good example is microphone. We had left and right control and up and down. Well, some of the microphones now do, like this microphone does, this camera has 5 microphones on it for surround sound.
Right.
And why can't I control the rear microphones and the front microphone?
We're actually doing a lot of work to enable microphone arrays, which are multiple microphones sitting together in an array that stream to a DSP algorithm in the software, in the operating system, that creates a much better capture signal than you could with just one single microphone.
Yeah, my friend has one in his car because he's building a speech recognition system.
Yep.
And you need 4 microphones to be able to filter out noise in the car, and then the inside 2 microphones pick up just your voice and not your passenger's voice.
Right. Yeah, a lot of cool things you can do with microphones that we're certainly working towards, because voice over IP, real-time communication is very, very important in Windows in the future. And also, if we can get a great sounding capture signal, we can also do speech recognition using commands, talk to your PC, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is certainly also an important scenario going forward.
Very cool.
So basically what we did, we said, hardware vendors, please build to this technology so we can enable these new scenarios. And one of the technologies is high definition audio. And David Roche of Optimal Sound.
There's somebody else here. So you're David?
I'm David.
And who do you work here at Microsoft? Or?
No, I don't, but I've been working real closely with high definition audio and the UAA initiative, working with Hakon and Steve Ball for many years now.
Okay.
In various different roles. I've been working on Windows Audio since its inception.
Wow.
In one way or another, and I was fortunate enough to be involved with Intel Press on this new book. You just got a picture of it. Here it is again. The high definition audio for the digital home.
Yeah.
And I think the import, and the way it ties in with what Hakon's been describing, is This is the instructions to the OEM or the ODM.
Okay.
The ODMs build the systems for the OEMs,
Yep.
typically in Asia, and instructions on how to meet all of these requirements. One big change, very big change in Vista is the audio fidelity requirements, making sure it sounds good. So you don't hear a noise if you move the mouse.
Yeah.
You don't hear the hard drive ticking in the background. You don't have big noises going on in the background. These requirements have actually been in place for many years, but it was difficult to enforce. And in the Vista time frame with the logo program, there's some methods for testing this and determining that it sounds.
Since you're not a Microsoft employee, you'll actually tell me the truth. Is this stuff any good?
Yes. Well, of course, I have a vested interest.
Well, you want your book to sell, but you know.
It's not only the book. This
Yeah.
is a big difference. It's one of the reasons that I'm attracted to working in this field. Is finally we're taking the audio from, one sound card vendor had for a while T-shirts that said, "I wouldn't be caught dead with motherboard audio." Of course, they want to sell their sound cards, but the fact is that the motherboard audio is actually, if you design it properly, is going to sound just as good as the sound card.
Really?
Or darn close, if you do the right things. And sometimes it's not even expensive to do it. You just have to know what to do.
Yeah.
And so this is, so several chapters of the book actually talk about how you design the motherboard, to lay it out and put the audio system away from the switching power supply so it doesn't get horrible noises picked up automatically. Put it over in the corner.
So
of the
this is
motherboard.
for a hardware geek working in the
Well-
OEMs and ODMs.
Well-
It's not for develop.
It's for any engineer that's interested
in audio.
improving,
And to that effect, there's several chapters that the software guys probably wouldn't get as much out of.
Yeah.
The hardware guys need to have that. In fact, some of the inspiration for this book was a white paper that Hakon and I have been working on exactly that subject, how to develop for the motherboard, get it right.
Yeah.
But then there's other chapters on audio for XP, audio for Vista, the signal flows, and so forth. Another thing that we put together as a companion to the book is this chart, which actually for the first time shows all the audio paths, hardware and software. So what you see here in the center section is the software.
Yeah.
So this would be absolutely the Microsoft domain. The Intel HD audio bus is, I guess, Intel's area, the specification area. And then these areas out here are the areas that the ODM and OEM have to design to get their circuits properly.
Right.
And then you can see the jacks way on the outside. So, in fact, this diagram shows a single chip on the PC. Everything below this dotted line is the RTC, the headset that Hakon was just describing.
Right.
And then above that is the 5.1 that you were asking about. So we can see how this is how you subdivide the whole system into the 5.1, the ability to record, say, stereo here,
Right.
and the ability to use a headset in here. And each of those has a completely separate software or instance of the software stack riding on top of it. So
Right.
this one would have all the beam forming algorithms and so forth for to feed into voice recognition or communications. Whereas this one might have the separate EQ. In this case, it would go right in here somewhere. That would
Yep.
be for your 5.1 speakers. So that's how you accomplish the different roles there. This is a single chip, but these could be two separate chips. It could be probably PCs in the future could have up to 5 different audio chips.
Why would you do that?
One for HDMI, one for voice over IP if you wanted to attach a phone handset to your PC and use it as if it were the phone line. But in fact, it reroutes it over the internet rather
Yeah.
than through the phone. Another, maybe one chip for the front panel where you plug in your headset. Another chip for the rear where you plug in your 5.1, and then maybe another chip where there's actually integrated amplifiers built into the PC. So you'd actually have the speaker terminals on the back of the PC.
Right.
Now this requires some new power supplies and other things to come.
Wow.
But it is
And Vista does a lot better with that kind of scenario than XP.
XP.
Well, since we have this standard, the high definition audio standard, as a building block,
Yeah.
we can build all these new technologies on top of that, and we can support the functionality in Windows going forward, regardless of what the technology on the back end is, as long as it exposes itself, the device, as an HD audio device.
Right.
So that's really compelling for us because we can easily innovate in software on top of these new technologies without having to rebuild the pipeline.
Now, why would an average person buy a sound card in this kind of world where you have actually a pretty good soundboard built on the motherboard?
Well, sound cards can also implement high definition audio. It's a hardware technology. You just put the registers together in a certain way,
right,
and then you have an HD audio compiled solution. So you can build a sound card, and some sound card vendors are doing that to meet the Vista logo requirements.
Yeah.
So,
but why if you have a
about-
Vista logo PC, why would you buy an additional sound card? Is there a scenario that this
well,
doesn't
as
need? Or
David,
if you're a gamer, would you want?
If you're a gamer and you believe that a hardware DSP chip on the card can improve your gaming experience, like in games today, there are hundreds and hundreds of voices, like game effects, that needs to be processed in a 3D environment to place it in your environment, in the game environment, and that can be done on the host. And in fact, the Microsoft gaming team are doing that with their Xbox and cross-platform gaming APIs.
Yeah.
So it can easily be done on the host. It can also be done on a DSP. And what the difference is case by case. One game, the difference may be visible. You can see the frame rate drop when you don't use a hardware DSP. Other games, it doesn't matter at all. It depends on the game design and how the game audio engine is designed.
Right.
We believe at Microsoft that you can do all that kind of processing on the host and that you don't need a hardware DSP, but there certainly are scenarios where a user might choose to buy such a card.
Right.
Those are typically $100, $150, $200, while the integrated solution that you get with the PC is typically free.
Yeah. Interesting. Is this new system why the Bungie group here decided to go to only release Halo 2 on Windows Vista?
I don't think it has any relevance.
No, it's just another business decision. But for a game developer, knowing that there's a really good base level of hardware there.
That's a really good question. For a game developer in the past that had to optimize their game audio engines for multiple different hardware solutions. You'd have to build one solution for the hardware accelerated case, one solution for another hardware accelerated case, and then the third solution for host-based.
Yeah.
You would have to have a host-based audio engine in your game. What we're thinking, and the gaming group should really comment on this more than I can, but I believe that what they're planning to do is to create a cross-platform gaming audio API that works on Xbox 360, Windows, that is host-based and that is agnostic to the audio device that's on the bottom. And since we have a standard for that, and the driver just there, and it should just work, then the gaming experience from the game ISV's point of view is easier because they can design one experience and know that it's going to be the same on 95% of the customer's machines.
Which means less testing and
Less
faster.
testing.
Your games come out faster and all that
Hopefully,
fun
yeah.
stuff. So this is really interesting.
Some game ISVs might disagree, and they might feel that using a hardware DSP and the functionality in there creates a better gaming experience. That's obviously going to be different from game ISV to game ISV.
Yeah, interesting. So what else do we need to know about this?
Well, you said less testing, getting stuff to market faster. This is true with the hardware as well. And especially if you have a good sounding audio system on your motherboard, then in many cases you're done.
Yeah.
So getting all of this pulled together is a big part of it. And just understanding the whole audio infrastructure, that's been something that's been difficult in the past. There's so many different aspects, especially when your understanding varied from this sound card to this sound card to a host-based system. And then there was the AC97 stuff had a bad reputation for sounding bad. Well, actually, the reason it sounded bad was because a lot of the designs they just didn't spend any time on. What happens often with the time pressures to bring new products to market is the junior designer or the junior motherboard designer on the team would be given audio. And then for his next project, he's promoted to Bluetooth or networking.
Yeah.
Well, and so all the audio knowledge that he learned went away.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore because there are requirements for a good fidelity and so forth. So you have to know what to do, and that was one of the primary motivations for the book, is just to make this available to everyone. The other thing is that we see this in the industry in general, the head count is very limited.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive industry. You need to minimize your head count. So often there's not an audio expert on the team.
Yeah.
And
Or I used to work at a video capture card company, and we had one guy who really understood everything. So he would spend 10% of his time on making audio sound better, but most of his time was spent on video.
Right. And audio's always been kind of the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
And this initiative, both HD Audio and the UAA, brings this together so that it's really, it becomes a unified scenario. And a large part of it is to be competitive with consumer electronics.
Yeah.
You know, in the prior to the introduction of all this technology, we'd hear statements such as, the best in PC audio is worse than the worst of consumer electronics audio.
Yeah.
Well, that was probably an overstatement, but it's just an opinion that people have, if they've heard that mouse noise, heard the hard drive noise, it's like, well, I'm going to get a sound card so I don't have to listen to that. But that's all changing.
Yeah.
That's a big part of what's changing. And then just going through it.
So this really means that for normal people who go in a computer store and buy a computer, if they see the Windows Vista logo on it, they'll get a pretty good audio experience right out of the box without having to buy another sound card or upgrade their speakers.
That's exactly right. And there's two levels of logo for the audio.
Okay.
One is the basic. Hogan's really the expert on this, but basic and premium. And the premium level is the audio quality will be excellent.
Okay.
The basic still.
Well, there's still room for improvement.
In the basic
Yeah.
or in the premium?
Both.
In both.
Yeah, so what
Okay.
we're putting together for Vista is essentially when we're talking about fidelity specifically, that's essentially the level at where the industry is at, with a little bit of tweaks that can get to the levels that we're setting. But we intend to improve that or increase the criteria the next few years, so that when people say that integrated audio sucks, in some cases, yeah, it does, because the system implementations aren't appropriate.
Yeah.
But going forward in a few years, we hope that all PC systems, regardless of what SKU they are and what business or entertainment or whatever scenario they're used in, will sound like a consumer electronics device does.
So what's the difference between the standard logo and the premium, and how will
It's
I
basic-
tell when I go in to buy my Windows Vista computer in January or whenever it comes
That's
out?
a good question for the logo marketing team. That's a really good question for them, but I think they'll be very clear what a premium system is. There will be a huge marketing campaign for that. Different logos, different maybe even the Vista desktop experience may be different for the premium.
Okay.
and all that
So it's
kind
not
of
just
stuff.
audio that's going to be
No,
different.
this is a whole program.
There's
yeah.
a whole. Okay,
But-
we got to get to those guys.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
you gotta
really
get to those
understand.
guys, yeah.
Probably later in the year, closer to the launch.
Right. But with regards to fidelity, the premium fidelity metrics are just higher than and more onerous to meet than the basic.
So what would I notice in terms of those differences, just in audio? Would I hear a better sound through an expensive pair of headphones? Would I?
Yes, that's basically an easy way to say it.
Right.
In a way, it's what you don't notice is, I think, the more important. I mean, an
Some
analogy.
audio noise or a little buzzing noise.
An
or-
analogy I like is the family sitting around the kitchen table having a discussion, and finally Junior walks over and turns off the fan above the stove, and Mom says, "Oh, that's a lot better. I didn't notice that noise before."
Yeah.
It's a large part of it is fatigue, actually.
Yeah.
Listening fatigue. When you have to listen through noise, your brain works harder. You can still tell everything, but you have to work harder. Or if you're hearing distortion, if you've listened to loud music through poor speakers, you can only listen for so long. But if you listen through good speakers, you can listen loudly for much longer. So absence of fatigue, absence of other noise. So it's not what you notice as much as what you don't notice.
Right.
And that's a key part of it.
Right.
And then just getting the whole industry into this mode where it's not the redheaded stepchild anymore.
And it is
Go ahead.
subjective, right? Because I hear people, MP3s sound fine to me, 96 kilobit per second, whatever.
Yeah.
And those same people, if they go into a listening room at a hi-fi store or something, and they listen to that same song on a DVD audio or super audio CD or some really high-end format like Windows Media, high definition, Windows Media audio professional format, for instance.
Yeah.
They say, "Wow, I didn't know that it could sound this good.
Yeah.
So it's
I
all
used to
about
sell stereo speakers in the 1980s.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
was
that's
there
a-
too. I was there too.
That's a trick. You have to be in a sound room
Yeah.
and have an A/B switch
Yeah.
to really tell the difference. Because if I just handed you a MP3 player and say, "Hey, listen to this," you say, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." But if I
So-
hand you my good headphones, and then you go, "Wow," it's the A/B when you really build up a knowledge of what good audio sounds like.
Well, that's an excellent point, because certainly you learned this in your A/B testing.
Yeah.
The human's audio memory is about 2 seconds. You'd like to think, oh, I can remember how that sounded from an hour ago or last week, or that sounded great. You remember that it sounded great, but if you actually try to compare stuff, 2 or 3 seconds is about the most you really remember.
Yeah.
Everything else is more emotionally based. You remember the emotions you got from it, but you don't really remember the audio.
Yeah.
And so if you do these A/B comparisons, you can find out real quickly. You start doing A/B comparisons between a system designed 2 years ago and one of these newer systems that meets the Vista requirements,
Yeah.
even the basic requirements, and you're going to hear a big difference when you get in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Even the room you're in matters, right?
Absolutely.
I have a video coming out with the media center team, and they have a room that was built for audio testing. It has absolutely no noise in it. Or like this room, I can hear the air conditioning going. Maybe that'll show up on the tape, where people are just.
the viewers will be fatigued by that.
Yeah, well, that's
Well,
what
if
people complain. It's like, why don't you use good microphones? It's like,
Right.
well,
And
I
you
don't.
and I'll bet if I walked over there and turned off the air conditioner right now, that everybody would actually be able to hear the difference
Yeah.
from it not being there, even though no one had really noticed it before.
So I guess, to summarize, for me, what we're doing is very subtle. I mean, we're
Yeah.
changing the way the hardware works. We're changing a little bit about how you use the device, audio UI to select devices, and in the fidelity area, we're trying to improve things,
Yeah.
and that'll be subtle as well. So, it's good to be able to talk about it, because otherwise people might not notice that we're doing a whole
Yeah.
lot of work in this area.
The other part is the geeks who watch Channel 9 usually have pretty good equipment. Usually they're the ones who buy the sound cards and
Sure.
know how to make a good system and know what a good system sounds like, because they care about it, right?
Right.
But the average everyday person, they just go into Fry's or Best Buy or a shop in India or shop in London.
Those are the people trying to make the experience better for.
Yeah.
I mean, the enthusiasts like myself and David and you and the people watching probably, we're always going to go and get the best gear. But for those who buy a $500 PC from an OEM, or maybe a $250 PC, we wanted that to be a better experience too. At least on par with what you can get from a $70 DVD player,
Yeah.
or a $20 portable CD player, because right now they sound better than a PC.
Yeah.
Some of these PCs. So.
Well, thanks for doing your work,
Okay.
and hopefully we all get there together.
Right. Do you want to summarize also, David?
Oh, I think it's just a new world going forward for audio. It's a very exciting time to be here. It's certainly an opportunity that I'm trying to work on. My new company is based around this type of stuff. So we provide test services, documentation, design services for those people that are trying to
Do you have
raise
a
the bar.
website where people can find you?
Yes, optimalsound.net.
Yeah. Nice URL too. So, well, thanks for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.